Her billionaire suffers a serious accident and is rescued by two homeless girls. When he wakes up in the hospital, he's left speechless at the sight of them. The rain hammered down on the pavement that cold winter night. Through the fogged-up windshield of his black Porsche, Thomas Laurent watched the city lights dance in the storm. His fingers tapped on the leather steering wheel, the only sound inside the car the rhythmic beat of the windshield wipers. 60 years of life, billions in the bank, and yet something weighed on him that night. The businessman adjusted the rearview mirror, his reflection revealing tired eyes and perfectly groomed grey hair. That board meeting had been especially draining. Another company would be shut down, more families out on the street. Business is business, he kept telling himself. A sharp curve appeared suddenly. The wet asphalt became an ice rink beneath the Porsche's tires. Thomas turned the wheel, but the car didn't respond. The world started spinning in slow motion. The impact was brutal. Twisted metal, shattered glass. The car flipped over 3 times before coming to a stop, upside down, on the edge of a ravine. Smoke began to rise from the crushed hood. In a nearby abandoned warehouse, 2 pairs of eyes peered through a broken window. Marie tightened her grip on her younger sister's hand. "Sophie, there's someone inside that car." The older girl hesitated for only a second before running out, pulling her sister by the hand. Their worn-out sandals slipped in the mud as they approached the vehicle. The smell of gasoline grew stronger with each step. Marie knelt in the puddle, her scraped knees hitting the soaked asphalt. Through the broken glass, she saw the man pinned by his seatbelt, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Her small, trembling hands tried to reach the seatbelt release. "Hey, Sophie, help me." 5-year-old Sophie squeezed her thin arm through the shattered window, reaching a spot Marie couldn't. Together they pushed the button. The seatbelt clicked open. Thomas began to regain consciousness, confused. His blurry gaze landed on 2 childlike faces, smeared with mud. The smaller one's eyes looked both scared and determined. The older girl, there was something about her. A golden locket hung around her neck, swaying as she pulled him. "Sir, you have to get out, it's on fire." Their small hands dragged him out. He felt the rain on his face, the smell of smoke intensifying. Marie and Sophie tugged at his arms with every bit of strength their little bodies could muster. A few yards away, an explosion lit up the night. Heat licked at their backs as the girls shielded him with their own bodies. Thomas tried to focus on these extraordinary children's faces, but his vision was failing. The golden locket swung one last time before everything went dark. Sirens pierced the night. When the firefighters arrived, they found a scene that would stay with them forever. 2 bedraggled girls, soaked to the bone, shielding an unconscious man with their tiny bodies. The older one clutched the golden locket around her neck, as though drawing strength from it. The younger one hummed a lullaby under her breath. The paramedics rushed over with a stretcher. "Step back, we need to take him." Marie and Sophie moved away, but not far. Their eyes never left the man they'd just saved. The rain still fell, but they barely noticed, transfixed by the paramedics' frantic efforts. "Are you related to him?" a firefighter asked. Marie just shook her head, the locket gleaming under the flashing lights. Sophie squeezed her sister's hand tighter. "Where do you live? We need to call your parents." The girls exchanged a quick glance before Marie answered, "We live over there," vaguely pointing toward the dark warehouse. The firefighter frowned, but before he could ask more questions, Marie tugged Sophie toward the ambulance that was getting ready to leave. "Can we go too, please?" Something about those children's eyes, maybe the mixture of innocence and determination, or the glow of the locket that seemed to mesmerize, made the paramedic nod in agreement. As the ambulance sped through the rainy night, Marie clutched Sophie's hand. The golden locket rested against her thin chest, harboring secrets that would forever change the life of the man they had just saved. Up front, the paramedic was jotting down notes on a clipboard. "Thomas Laurent, 60 years old, businessman?" His gaze drifted to the rearview mirror occasionally, observing the 2 little heroines. There was something special about them, something he couldn't quite explain. The rain continued pounding outside, washing away traces of the crash, but failing to erase the fate that had just been set in motion on that stormy night. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the first sound Thomas Laurent registered upon waking. The fluorescent hospital lights hurt his eyes as he tried to get his bearings. His body ached, and a jumble of fragmented images crowded his mind. Rain, fire, tiny hands dragging him. Slowly he turned his head to the side. The movement made his neck protest, but what he saw took his breath away for a moment. Two little girls were curled up asleep in a hospital chair. The older one, maybe around 7, protectively embraced the younger, who couldn't be older than 5. Their clothes, though clean, were noticeably worn. The smaller girl was clutching a crumpled piece of paper with colorful drawings, while the older one's hand was wrapped around something at her neck. Thomas blinked a few times, trying to piece together his thoughts. Were they the ones who saved him? The images started coming back. The accident, the overturned car, their unlikely rescue. As if sensing his gaze, the older girl opened her eyes. Bright emerald green. Thomas felt the air leave his lungs, that specific shade of green, that eye shape. His heart pounded, making the monitor beep more rapidly. "He's awake," Marie whispered, nudging her sister. Sophie woke up, rubbing her eyes, and when she smiled, Thomas felt a punch to the gut. That smile, the heart monitor sped up even more. You saved me." His voice came out rough, almost a whisper. Marie nodded, sitting up straighter in the chair. The movement made the golden locket around her neck sway, catching the fluorescent light. Thomas couldn't take his eyes off it. "We saw your car crash," Sophie explained, her small voice holding a disconcerting maturity. "Marie said we had to help. The doctors said you've got bruised ribs," Marie added, her green eyes studying Thomas's face with curiosity. "We stayed to see if you'd be okay." Thomas tried to sit up, but a sharp pain made him recoil. The girls stood instinctively as if they wanted to help. That small movement brought Marie closer, and again Thomas felt short of breath. There was something about her that made his chest tighten inexplicably. What are your names?" he asked, trying to calm his increasingly erratic breathing. "I'm Marie, and this is my sister Sophie," the older one answered, the locket still swinging gently. Sophie approached the bed, holding out the crumpled paper. "I drew this for you." Her smile. Thomas felt a wave of dizziness. It was like seeing a ghost, a memory he couldn't fully grasp. The heart monitor beeped faster. "Are you okay, sir?" Marie asked, worried. Her green eyes, those eyes. A nurse rushed into the room, alerted by the monitors. "Mr. Laurent, your heart rate is too high." Thomas barely heard her. He couldn't stop looking at the girls. There was something about them, something that deeply unsettled him. The golden locket glinted provocatively, an enigma demanding to be solved. "Girls, you need to step out for a bit," the nurse insisted, checking Thomas's vitals. "No," Thomas protested more loudly than he intended, startling everyone in the room. They can stay." The nurse hesitated, then nodded, adjusting his IV. "Just please stay calm, Mr. Laurent." Marie and Sophie settled back into the chair, now closer to the bed. Thomas tried to steady his breathing, but it was hard. Every detail about them triggered something inside him. The way Marie tilted her head slightly when she spoke, the way Sophie bit her lip when she was concentrating on her drawing. Where do you live?" he managed to ask after a few minutes. The girls exchanged a swift glance before Marie answered, "We stay in a warehouse near where you crashed." "All by yourselves?" Sophie lowered her eyes to her drawing. Marie instinctively gripped the locket. "Now we do," she replied simply. Thomas felt an even heavier weight in his chest. 2 children alone on the streets. And that overwhelming feeling that he should know them, that something crucial was slipping through his fingers. "Why did you stay here? You must be tired." "We promised," Sophie replied, her familiar smile making Thomas's heart skip a beat. "Mom always said a promise is a promise." Mom," Thomas mumbled, feeling a sudden dizziness. The heart monitor beeped erratically again. The nurse reappeared immediately. "Mr. Laurent, you need to rest. Girls, it's time to let him sleep for a bit." Marie and Sophie stood, reluctant. "We'll come back tomorrow," Marie promised, her green eyes meeting Thomas's once more. As he watched them leave, Thomas felt something precious slipping away through his fingers. The golden locket flashed one last time before disappearing out the door, leaving him with a crushing sense of loss. "Nurse," he called, his voice trembling slightly. "Those girls, have they been here since I was brought in?" "Yes, Mr. Laurent, they haven't left the hospital even once. We tried to get them to go to a shelter, but they refused." Thomas closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing heart. There was a mystery here, something important he couldn't unravel. Those green eyes, that smile, the golden locket. They all felt like pieces of a puzzle he never knew he needed to solve. I need to make some calls when morning comes, he murmured, already feeling sleep pull him under. The nurse nodded, adjusting his pillow. As he drifted off, Thomas could still see those emerald green eyes in his mind and the hypnotic shine of the golden locket dancing through his restless dreams. Morning brought an uneasy silence to the hospital room. Thomas watched the sunrise through the window, his head full of questions with no answers. On the small table beside him lay the local newspaper, its front page detailing his accident. Yet his eyes always returned to the empty chair where the girls had slept. He picked up his cell phone and dialed a number. "Robert, I need your services. Yes, it's urgent." Soft footsteps in the hallway interrupted his call. Marie and Sophie entered the room, carrying a cup of water from the drinking fountain. The golden locket swung around Marie's neck, capturing the morning light. "Good morning, Mr. Laurent," Sophie said with a smile that made his heart clench. "We brought you some water," Marie explained, her green eyes studying Thomas's face with that unsettling intensity. Thomas ended the call, watching as the girls settled in. Their hair was messy, their clothes wrinkled from sleeping in the hospital chair. "Have you had breakfast?" Marie shook her head. "We usually eat later when the bakery tosses out yesterday's bread." Thomas's stomach churned. "How long have you been living like this?" Sophie counted on her little fingers. "Since Mom became a star." "A star?" Thomas asked, his throat tightening. Marie clutched the locket instinctively. "It's been 8 months. We stayed in a shelter for a while, but they wanted to separate us," Sophie added, eyes filling with tears. Thomas tried to sit up, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "And that locket?" Marie touched the gold object reverently. "It was Mom's. She said it was very important that I should always keep it safe." The door opened, interrupting them. A middle-aged man with graying hair and a well-tailored suit entered quietly. Robert Anders, the most competent private investigator in the city. "Mr. Laurent," he greeted formally, his experienced eyes taking in every detail about the girls. "Robert," Thomas responded, eyes still locked on the locket. "Girls, could you give us a minute?" Marie nodded and took Sophie by the hand. The locket caught the light one last time before they disappeared through the door. "What do you need, Mr. Laurent?" Thomas took a deep breath. "I want everything on those girls, where they came from, who their mother was, why they're alone. And most importantly," his voice faltered, "I want to know about that locket." Robert scribbled quick notes. "Any particular reason?" "There's something about them, Robert. Something I can't explain. When I look at Marie, those eyes, and Sophie, that smile, it's like I should know them." The investigator raised an eyebrow. "And the locket?" "It looks familiar, but I can't recall from where. I need to find out." Robert closed his notepad. "I'll get started right away, but Mr. Laurent, street kids, sometimes they're hard to track." "Use all necessary resources," Thomas ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. When the investigator left, the girls returned. Sophie carried a new drawing. Marie absent-mindedly fiddled with the locket. "Girls," Thomas said gently, "would you like to get off the streets?" Marie pulled her sister protectively closer. "We're not going to a shelter. They can't split us up." No, Thomas clarified quickly. "I have a big house with empty rooms. You could stay there temporarily." Sophie's eyes widened. "A real house?" "With a bed?" Marie asked, still wary. Thomas felt his heart tighten. "Yes, with a bed, food, clean clothes, at least until we figure everything out." The girls exchanged a look. Marie unconsciously held the locket. "Why do you want to help?" It was a simple question, yet Thomas had no easy answer. How could he explain that inexplicable connection, the sense that they mattered to him and that he needed to protect them? "You saved my life," he answered simply, "and no child so young should be living on the streets." Sophie beamed, that troubling smile once again tugging at his heart. "Can we bring our treasures?" "Treasures?" Marie explained. "Photos of Mom, Sophie's drawings, my hair ribbons." "Of course," Thomas replied, watching the locket gleam. "Bring everything." A nurse came in with the morning meds. "Mr. Laurent, the doctor approved your discharge for tomorrow." Thomas nodded, never taking his eyes off the girls. "Please have 2 rooms prepared at my home and arrange for clothes, hygiene products." The nurse paused, surprised, glancing at the girls. "They'll be staying with me. Thomas explained firmly. Temporarily. Marie still held the locket, her green eyes studying Thomas with an intensity beyond her years. Sophie was already doodling a large house on her crumpled paper. While the nurse administered medication, Thomas picked up his phone again. He needed to accelerate the investigation. That locket, those eyes, that smile. There was a mystery here, a story he needed to uncover. In the hallway, Robert Anders was already making his first calls. In his notepad, one phrase was underlined: golden locket, possible key. The girls settled back into the chair, Sophie drawing, Marie toying with the locket. Thomas watched them, feeling that unexplainable bond grow stronger with every passing moment. "Our mom always said," Marie murmured almost to herself, "nothing happens by chance." Thomas shivered. Somehow he knew she was right. That accident, that rescue, that locket, it all felt like part of something bigger, a puzzle he had only just begun to piece together. The morning sun continued to rise, casting golden reflections through the room. Around Marie's neck, the locket glimmered like a promise, a secret waiting to be revealed. And for the first time in many years, Thomas Laurent sensed he was on the brink of a discovery that would change his life forever. Robert Anders watched the rain through his office window, a cup of cold coffee forgotten on a desk, cluttered with documents. 3 days of intense investigation had yielded some intriguing results. His phone rang, displaying Thomas Laurent's name. "Any news?" Thomas's anxious voice came through the line. "We need to talk in person," Robert answered, eyeing a yellow folder on his desk. "It's about the locket." An hour later, Robert walked into Laurent Mansion. Thomas awaited him in the study, the girls sleeping upstairs in the rooms specially prepared for them. "The locket has quite an interesting history," Robert began, opening his folder. "It's a unique piece commissioned over 50 years ago. I found the record at an old jewelry store." Thomas leaned over the desk, eager. "And?" "It was purchased by a couple for their newborn daughter. Her name was Sarah." The name hit Thomas like a punch. Sarah. Why did it stir such turmoil in his chest? "Sarah," he repeated softly. "And the girls?" Robert pulled out more papers. Marie and Sophie were registered under Sarah Matthews, single mother, worked as a primary school teacher until she fell ill. She passed away 8 months ago. Thomas closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. Matthews, that last name. A noise at the door interrupted them. Sophie stood there hugging a worn-out teddy bear. "I can't sleep," she mumbled. "Can I stay here?" Thomas nodded automatically, stowing the documents away. Sophie curled up on the study's sofa, her sleepy eyes watching both men. "My mom used to tell us stories if we couldn't sleep," she said, adjusting the teddy bear in her arms. "What kind of stories?" Thomas asked gently. "About a girl who had a magical golden locket," Marie answered, appearing at the door, "and her best friend who played with her every day." Robert and Thomas exchanged quick glances. The investigator discreetly grabbed a notepad. "Can you tell me that story?" Thomas asked, heart racing. Marie sat beside her sister, touching the locket instinctively. "Once upon a time, there was a girl who owned a golden locket. She got it when she was born, and it was her most precious treasure. She had a special friend. They played together every single day." "And what happened to them?" Robert asked, scribbling notes quickly. "Mom always cried at that part," Sophie commented. "She said the boy went far away." Thomas felt a stab in his chest. Marie continued. "The girl grew up but never forgot him. She kept the locket to always remember." Robert took something from his folder, an old yellowed photograph. "Girls, do you recognize this woman?" The photo showed a young woman with green eyes smiling at the camera. Around her neck gleamed the same golden locket. "Mom!" Sophie exclaimed, gently taking the picture. Thomas couldn't tear his eyes away from it. Sarah Matthews smiled so sweetly, her green eyes identical to Marie's, that locket always around her neck. "Where did you find this?" he asked Robert, voice trembling. "In the archives of the school where she taught," the investigator replied. "Thomas, there's more." But Thomas could barely listen. He looked at Marie, who now held the locket while gazing at her mother's photo. The same green eyes, the same way of tilting her head. "She tried to be strong," Marie said suddenly. "Even when she got sick, she always smiled at us." "She sang to us every night," Sophie added, her eyes heavy with sleep. "That lullaby about the locket." "A song?" Robert asked, pencil at the ready. Marie began to hum a soft melody. Thomas felt the world spin. He knew that song. Where had he heard it? "Mr. Laurent?" Robert called, worried by his pale face. "I'm fine," Thomas murmured, though his hands trembled. "Girls, can you show me more pictures of your mother?" Marie nodded and dashed off to grab a worn shoebox. Inside were a few carefully preserved photos, newspaper clippings, an unopened envelope. Thomas flipped through each item reverently. Sarah at various stages, younger, smiling in a park, older, hugging the girls, the final photo in the hospital, clearly ill but still smiling, the locket always present. "She never took it off," Marie commented, touching the locket on her own neck. "Said it was way too special." Robert observed silently, taking notes. His years of experience told him they were close to something very significant. "Girls," Thomas asked gently, "did your mother ever talk about her past, about when she was a kid?" Sophie was already asleep on the sofa, but Marie nodded. "She kept a box of old stuff in the basement at our house, but when we lost our home, we couldn't bring it with us." Robert wrote down the address Marie provided. Thomas continued leafing through the photos, his fingers tracing the locket in each image. "She had a boy in those old photos," Marie continued sleepily. "Mom never said his name, but she cried when she looked at them." Thomas's eyes shot up. "What boy?" But Marie had already dozed off beside her sister, the locket glinting softly under the study's lights. Robert slipped his notebook back into his pocket. "I'll check out the old house tomorrow. That box might have answers." Thomas nodded, covering the girls with a blanket. "Robert, why do I feel like I know these kids? Why does every detail about Sarah feel so familiar?" Robert finished, putting away his papers. "Maybe because it is. Keep focusing on the locket, Thomas. Sometimes memory just needs a little push." After Robert left, Thomas remained in the study, watching the girls sleep. The locket around Marie's neck shone like a key to a past he couldn't quite recall. He picked up the photo of Sarah again. Her green eyes seemed to span time, carrying a secret he now desperately needed to uncover. Inside the sealed envelope found among the girls' things was a single handwritten phrase: "For when you find Thomas." His heart pounded. How did Sarah know him? Why did those green eyes look so familiar? And above all, why did he feel like he was on the verge of learning something that would change his life forever? Rain was still falling outside, lulling the girls to sleep. Around Marie's neck, the locket held its secrets, awaiting the right moment to reveal them. And for the first time in his life, the powerful businessman Thomas Laurent felt utterly lost and strangely at peace with it. Sarah's old house looked even smaller in the morning light. Robert Anders shone his flashlight as he descended the basement steps, Thomas right behind him. The smell of mold and neglect was strong. "It must be around here somewhere," Robert muttered, illuminating dusty shelves. Thomas scanned each corner, imagining Sarah living there with the girls. A cardboard box caught his eye, half hidden beneath a threadbare curtain. "Over there," he pointed. The box was surprisingly intact. On its lid, written in neat handwriting, "Memories." "Want to do the honors?" Robert asked, handing Thomas the flashlight. With trembling hands, Thomas opened the box. On top lay an old photo album, its cover faded with age. The moment he opened it, his world stopped. The first picture showed two children around 10 years old, smiling broadly. The girl had bright green eyes and wore a golden locket. The boy... "Oh my God," Thomas whispered, collapsing onto the dusty floor. "That's me." Robert carefully picked up the photo. "Thomas Laurent and Sarah Matthews, summer of 1975. He read the inscription on the back. More photos followed. Thomas and Sarah playing in the park, building forts, celebrating birthdays. In all of them, the golden locket gleamed around her neck. How did I not remember this?" Thomas murmured, hands shaking as he turned each page. A yellowed envelope fell from the album. Inside was a letter dated 6 months earlier. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means we finally found each other again, even if it's too late for me. The locket you gave me for my 10th birthday never left my neck. It was my connection to the happiest days of my life. I tried so many times to find you. When I learned about my illness, you became my last hope. Marie and Sophie will need someone when I'm gone. Forgive me for not being braver sooner. Say with eternal love, Sarah." Thomas dropped the letter, tears streaming down his face. Memories flooded in. Sarah laughing, Sarah crying when he told her he was moving away, the promise never to remove the locket. "Mr. Laurent?" Robert asked softly. "We have to go back," Thomas answered, packing everything. "I need to hear it from them." Back at the mansion, they found Marie sitting on the stairs, fiddling with the locket. "Did you find Mom's box?" she asked, her green eyes, Sarah's eyes, bright with curiosity. Thomas nodded, sitting beside her. "Marie, can you tell me about your mum's final days?" Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs, coming down to join them. Marie took a deep breath, holding the locket. "Mom got very sick," she began. "At first she could still work, but then we had to move to a smaller place," Sophie added. "She sold stuff to buy medicine." Marie nodded. "She cried at night when she thought we were asleep. She held onto this locket and looked at a piece of paper with an address." "Your address," Robert murmured to Thomas. "One day," Sophie went on, "Mom said she was going to look for a special friend who could help, but she couldn't make it," Marie concluded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "The bus crashed and—" Thomas pulled them both into a tight embrace, his heart breaking. Sarah had been on her way to see him, his childhood best friend, the girl with the locket, desperately trying to find him. "We ended up in a shelter," Sophie said between sobs. "But they were going to separate us, so we ran away. I promised Mom," Marie said, clutching the locket. "I promised I'd always take care of Sophie." Thomas wiped the girl's tears. "Sarah, your mom, that was the most special person I ever knew. Now I understand why I couldn't stop thinking about you after the accident." Marie's eyes widened. "The boy from the pictures?" "Yes," Thomas choked up. "I gave her that locket as a symbol of our friendship. Sophie held one of the old photos. That's why Mom cried when she looked at these pictures. She was looking for you." Robert watched in silence, scribbling the final notes. His job was done, but the story was far from over. "She tried so hard to make ends meet," Marie continued. "She'd cook for days, sew our clothes, but medicine was expensive." Thomas felt each word like a knife in his heart. Sarah, his Sarah, struggling alone while he lived in luxury, completely oblivious. "Sometimes we had no dinner," Sophie murmured. "But Mom told us stories so we'd forget we were hungry. Say stories about a boy and a girl with a magic locket," Marie said, looking at Thomas. Thomas carefully took the locket from her, gazing at its familiar shine. 50 years of memories held in a small golden object. "She never gave up on you," Marie said quietly. "Even in the hospital, she said she'd find you." Thomas hugged the girls again, silent tears falling. "She found me through you. She did it." Sophie clutched his hand. "Will you take care of us like you promised, Mom?" "I will," Thomas replied without hesitation. "I'll take care of you the way I should have taken care of Sarah." Marie smiled, Sarah's smile. And for the first time since the accident, Thomas fully understood his connection to the girls. It wasn't just the locket, the green eyes, or the familiar smile. It was destiny completing a circle begun 50 years ago, when a boy gave a golden locket to his best friend, promising eternal friendship. Robert closed his notebook and discreetly left, leaving Thomas with his newly found daughters of the heart. Around Marie's neck, the locket glowed with renewed light, as if Sarah herself was smiling, relieved that her final mission was accomplished. Outside, it started to rain again, washing away the past while nurturing the future that was just beginning. Thomas spent the entire night in his study, poring over the documents found in Sarah's box. Each paper told a story of a silent struggle that broke his heart. On his desk, he organized the last 2 years of his friend's life in chronological order. The first document was a letter of dismissal from the school where Sarah had taught for 15 years. Due to budget cuts, Thomas crumpled the paper, imagining Sarah's despair at that news. Next was a stack of medical bills, the initial diagnosis, expensive tests, experimental treatments. Sarah had sold everything possible to pay for the first months. He noted the scribbled marginal notes in her trembling handwriting. Sell the car. Try a loan. Look for Thomas. One envelope caught his attention, a notice of eviction. Sarah had fallen 3 months behind on rent while trying to cover treatment costs. The girls had only been 6 and 4 at the time. "I'm Mr. Laurent?" Marie's voice pulled him back to the present. She stood in the doorway, still in pajamas, the golden locket reflecting the lamp's soft glow. "Marie, can't you sleep?" She shook her head, stepping closer. Her green eyes, Sarah's eyes, took in the piles of papers on the desk. "Mom kept everything organized," she said, gently touching one of the documents. "She said someday this would be important." Thomas brought over a chair for her. "Can you tell me more about that time?" Marie sat, adjusting the locket. "At first, it wasn't too bad. Mom always found a way. She sewed our clothes, made meals stretch for days." Her childish voice contrasted with the maturity of her words. Thomas found Sarah's ledger among the papers, where she noted every penny spent. "When she got sick," Marie continued, "she tried to hide it from us, but I'd see her taking medicine in secret, crying in the bathroom." Thomas found a photo from that era. Sarah was still smiling, but visibly thinner. The locket, ever present, seemed even heavier on her weakening frame. One day, Marie picked up that photo carefully. "She couldn't get up to teach. Sophie was scared, but I knew I had to be strong." Thomas found a child's note, written by Marie in shaky letters. "Mom, I made soup just like you taught me. Love you." "We moved to a smaller house," Marie went on. "Mom pretended it was an adventure so Sophie wouldn't be sad, but I saw her crying while she packed our things." Among the documents, Thomas found pawnshop receipts. Sarah had pawned her graduation ring, her mother's earrings, even her wedding band, anything to buy more time for treatment. "One night," Marie said, clutching the locket, "I found Mom looking at an old newspaper. It had your picture, Mr. Laurent. She was crying so hard, holding the locket." Thomas found that newspaper clipping. It was an article about one of his company's many acquisitions. He was smiling in the photo, unaware that his childhood friend was desperately struggling to survive. "She started searching for your address," Marie continued softly. "She called places, sent letters, but never got past the security or secretaries. All the letters were there, returned, stamped, recipient inaccessible." Thomas's eyes welled at Sarah's handwriting, weaker with each attempt. "In the hospital," Marie added, voice quavering. "She still tried. She asked the nurses to help look for you. She said her friend Thomas wouldn't let her daughters be alone." Sophie appeared at the door, holding her teddy bear. "Marie, I had a bad dream." Marie opened her arms, just like Sarah did in the hospital photo. Sophie nestled onto her sister's lap, eyes full of curiosity at the papers on the desk. "That's Mom's handwriting," she noted, picking up one of Sarah's last notes. "For my little warriors," Thomas read aloud. "Be strong like you always have been. The locket will lead you to Thomas. He'll understand when he sees it. Mom loves you more than anything." Sophie sniffled. "She talked about you on her last day. She said she was going to find you." Thomas picked up the final document, a police report on the accident. Sarah had been on the bus heading to his company, carrying a folder with all the evidence that proved who she was and her connection to him. "We promised not to be separated," Marie said, hugging Sophie. "At the shelter, they wanted to send us to different places, so we ran. We lived in that warehouse," Sophie added. "Marie took care of me just like Mom taught her." Thomas gazed at the two girls, so young, so strong, so much like Sarah. His best friend had raised two warriors, just like her. "The locket," Marie touched the gold piece. "Mom said it was magical, that one day it would lead us to her special friend." "Sure, and it did," Sophie said with a sleepy smile. "We saved you from the crash." Thomas picked up one last paper from the box, an old photo of him and Sarah as kids, smiling, the locket shining between them. He remembered his childhood promise. "I'll always be here for you, Sarah." "Girls," his voice shook, "your mama, Sarah, was the most special person I ever knew. Now I realize why I felt so drawn to you." Marie smiled, Sarah's smile. "Is the locket really magic?" "It is," Thomas replied, tears streaming. "Magic enough to bring you both to me, to fulfill a promise I made so long ago." Sophie had already dozed off in her sister's arms. Marie fought sleep, still holding the locket. "Come," Thomas stood, lifting Sophie gently. "We'll continue tomorrow." As he carried the girls to their rooms, Thomas glanced one last time at the documents on his desk. Moonlight spilled through the window, making the locket at Marie's neck shimmer. Sarah had fought to her last breath to protect her daughters. Now it was his turn to honor her memory by caring for the two greatest treasures she left behind. The locket had completed its mission, not just reminding Thomas of an old promise, but giving new meaning to his life. In the stillness of the night, he could almost hear Sarah's laughter, approving of the fate she had fought so hard to secure. Night had been long in Thomas Laurent's study. After putting the girls to bed, he returned to the documents, each paper revealing more of Sarah's silent battle. A stack of paycheck stubs caught his eye. 3 different jobs: teacher by day, waitress by night, typist in the early hours. Soft footsteps roused him from his thoughts. Marie stood at the door, still in pajamas, her eyes red from crying in her sleep. "I dreamed about Mom," she said softly, coming closer. Thomas nudged the papers aside, making room for her to sit. The golden locket reflected the glow of the desk lamp. "Oh, want to tell me about it?" Marie took a deep breath, her small fingers absent-mindedly playing with the locket. "I dreamed of all those nights she came home late. I'd pretend to be asleep, but I'd watch her count coins at the kitchen table." Thomas found a small glass jar among Sarah's belongings. There were still a few coins inside, along with a note that read, "Emergency fund for my princesses." "She worked so much," Marie continued, voice trembling. "Sometimes she'd fall asleep sitting at the table in her waitress uniform. I'd get up and cover her with a blanket." Thomas pictured Sarah exhausted, drifting off over unpaid bills, while her 7-year-old daughter cared for her. "Sophie didn't understand everything," Marie said. "Mom made it seem like a game when there wasn't enough food, telling us we were having a special picnic with bread and tea." Among the papers, Thomas found Sarah's recipe notebook, creative ways to stretch meals for as long as possible. On the last page, a list titled "Places that Accept Children," with addresses of shelters and charities. "Done it one night," Marie went on. "I found Mom crying in the bathroom. She tried to hide it, saying it was just the shower running, but I knew. She was holding this." Marie showed him a wrinkled pamphlet about experimental cancer treatments. Thomas's heart clenched. Sarah had always been proud, even as a child. How many times had she stifled her sobs to keep her daughters feeling safe? Sophie appeared in the doorway, dragging her teddy bear. "Marie, where'd you go?" "Right here, Soph. Come." The little one climbed onto her sister's lap, curiously eyeing the papers on the desk. "Are those Mom's things?" Thomas nodded, picking up a photo of Sarah smiling with the girls at the park. Even while sick, her eyes shone when she looked at them. "That day," Sophie pointed at the picture, "we spent our first night in a shelter. Mom said it was an adventure, that we were explorers." Marie held her sister tighter. She didn't want us to know we'd lost our home. She packed our stuff like it was a fun trip. Thomas discovered the eviction notice among the documents. That same week, a massive hospital bill. Sarah had chosen between paying rent and continuing treatment. "At the shelter," Sophie continued, "Mom told us stories every night about a girl with a magical locket who never gave up hope. She'd stare at the locket at night," Marie added. "Whispered your name, Mr. Laurent. Said she had to be strong just a bit longer until she found you." Thomas picked up another envelope. Inside were clippings about him, addresses jotted down, repeated failed attempts to make contact. Sarah had tried everything. "Why didn't she ask for help sooner?" Thomas whispered. Marie touched the locket. "She said she needed to prove she was strong. She didn't want to disappoint the friend who gave her the locket." "Only when she got really sick," Sophie added. "Did she decide to look for you?" "She said sometimes being strong means knowing when to ask for help." Thomas found one final medical receipt, dated 3 days before the accident. Sarah had sold the locket to pay for the appointment. On the back, scrawled in faint handwriting, "Forgive me, Thomas. I have to break our promise to save my girls." "How did the locket come back?" he asked, seeing it shine on Marie's neck. "Hey, Mom got it back," Marie replied. "She worked extra shifts at the restaurant, said she couldn't lose the one chance to find you." Sophie yawned, sinking deeper into her sister's lap. "She cried so much when she bought it back. She kissed the locket and said everything would be okay now." Thomas picked up the last document, a letter addressed to him found among Sarah's belongings after the accident. "Dear Thomas, forgive me for waiting so long. My pride kept me from seeking you earlier, even when everything was falling apart. You always said I was too stubborn. Marie and Sophie are all I have. They're as strong as you always claimed I was. But now I must admit I can't fight alone anymore. The locket you gave me held so many dreams. Now it holds my final hope. When you see it, you'll remember our promise, right? The promise you made to the little girl you swore never to abandon. I'm on my way to your office. The girls are safe at the shelter, waiting for me to return with good news. I've prayed for the courage to do this. If something happens to me, the locket will guide them to you. You'll recognize them, Thomas. Marie has my eyes, Sophie has my smile. They are pieces of my heart, and they will need you. Always yours, Sarah. Thomas couldn't hold back tears. Marie and Sophie, both sleepy now, watched him with Sarah's eyes. She did it, Marie said quietly, almost asleep. The locket brought us to you. Yes, Thomas replied, voice unsteady. And now I see why she fought so hard. You two are the greatest treasure she could have ever left behind. The girls dozed off there in the study, while Thomas continued reading through the documents. Each paper told a story of love, sacrifice, and resolve. Sarah had given everything she had to protect her daughters. The golden locket gleamed on Marie's neck, no longer a symbol of lost friendship, but a golden thread tying their destinies together once more. Thomas silently vowed to Sarah that her girls would never again know hunger or loneliness. Outside, night began yielding to dawn. A new day was coming, bringing with it the chance to honor Sarah's memory by loving the two tiny warriors she'd left behind. The locket had fulfilled its mission, not just by reconnecting past and present, but by building a bridge to a future Sarah had dreamed of for her daughters. Sarah's old house looked even smaller now in the sunlight. Thomas parked on the narrow street, surveying the vacant windows and overgrown yard where flowers once bloomed. Marie and Sophie sat quietly in the back seat, recalling memories with every glance. It was prettier before, Sophie murmured, clutching her teddy bear. Marie held the locket tightly. Mom's roses all died. The real estate agent was waiting at the door, holding a stack of papers under his arm. His expression shifted when he recognized Thomas Laurent, the billionaire suddenly interested in a modest house in a simple neighborhood. Mr. Laurent, he greeted, unlocking the rusty door. This property has been vacant since the eviction 8 months ago. Thomas felt Marie squeeze his hand. The girl stared at the kitchen doorway, where pencil marks still measured her and Sophie's growth spurts. Over there, Sophie pointed to a cupboard under the stairs, was our secret spot when Mom worked nights. Thomas opened the small cupboard. Inside, Sophie's drawings were taped to the wall, a makeshift gallery. Each one told a story. Sarah asleep at the kitchen table in her waitress uniform, Marie making soup, the three of them sharing a piece of bread. I found it, Marie called from the kitchen. Behind a loose tile, she retrieved a small metal box. Mom kept important stuff here. The real estate agent cleared his throat. Mr. Laurent, about the paperwork. Later, Thomas said firmly, sitting on the kitchen floor with the girls. Marie opened the box carefully. Inside lay a neat stack of receipts, each one a piece of Sarah's struggle. Overdue hospital bills, stamped in red, prescriptions never purchased, loan applications denied. Mom cried a lot that day. Marie pointed to a particular receipt. The day Sarah pawned her wedding ring to buy antibiotics. Sophie scattered her drawings on the floor. One showed Sarah in a hospital bed, the locket shining even in the child's colorful crayon strokes. That was the day the doctor said she needed an expensive treatment. Thomas looked at the dates on the bills. Sarah had tried to keep up until about 2 months before the accident. Then everything unraveled. Here, Mr. Laurent, Marie offered him a worn envelope. Mom wrote you letters every night but never mailed them. She said she had to find the right words first. Dozens of letters were inside, each beginning with Dear Thomas. Some were pleas for help, others simply vented a mother's fear as she tried to stay strong. This day, Sophie pointed at another drawing, was our birthday. Mom didn't have money for gifts, so she made a treasure hunt around the house. The treasure was the story of the locket. Thomas found the handwritten treasure map, detailing each clue leading to a special childhood memory, ending with the day he gave Sarah the locket. Marie pulled more papers from behind the stove. These were her resumes. Every night she sent them out, trying to find a better job. The agent cleared his throat again. Mr. Laurent, there are other interested buyers. Thomas stood, his mind made up. How much? Excuse me. How much for the house? I want to buy it right now. The man stammered, taken aback. But it's a very modest property for someone like you. It's their home, Thomas replied simply. Marie, Sophie, would you like to live here again? The sisters exchanged glances, tears welling up. Sophie ran to their secret cupboard. Marie clutched the locket. Can we plant roses again? Sophie asked softly. All the roses you want, Thomas promised, We'll bring life back to this place." While the agent hurried off to prepare the paperwork, Thomas continued exploring the house with the girls. Every room held memories. Every corner told a story of love and sacrifice. In Sarah's old bedroom, they found more of Sophie's drawings stashed in a drawer. Glimpses of daily life that broke Thomas's heart. Sarah counting coins at night, Marie making tea for her sick mother, all three cuddling in the hospital bed. "She always smiled in my drawings," Sophie said, "even when she was sad in real life." Marie opened the empty closet, revealing a lone blue dress. It was her favorite. She sold all her other clothes, but she kept this one. She said she would wear it the day she finally found you, Mr. Laurent. Thomas touched the worn fabric. Sarah would never wear that dress again, never plant her roses, never see her daughters safe and loved the way she'd dreamed. "We'll make this place a home again," he promised, hugging the girls. "Every rose we plant, every laugh on these stairs, every happy moment will be in her memory." Marie smiled through her tears. "Mom would like that. She always said a house isn't about walls, but about love." Sophie was already sketching a new picture. A house with a big rose garden, Thomas, Marie, and herself smiling. In the sky, a star gleamed, wearing a golden locket. The agent returned with the documents, and Thomas signed without hesitation. The house wasn't just a property, it was the final stage of Sarah's struggle, the place where she'd given everything to protect her daughters. As the girls ran into the yard, excitedly planning where to plant the new roses, Thomas found one last letter hidden behind the bedroom mirror. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means you finally found our little home. It's not much, but this is where I raised our girls with every ounce of love I had. Each corner holds a story. Each wall heard our laughter and tears. Take care of them, Thomas, not for what I failed to do, but for everything they deserve to become. Marie has my strength, Sophie has my heart. Together they are the best of me. The locket led them to you, as I always knew it would. Now you can finally keep your promise, not for me, but for them. So with eternal love, Sarah." Thomas tucked the letter to his heart. Outside, Marie and Sophie were already making plans for their new old home. The locket gleamed on Marie's neck, no longer just a reminder of tragedy, but a promise of new beginnings. Though Sarah wasn't physically there, her love filled every inch of the house. Now her daughters would grow up in the home she'd fought so hard to keep. Life would gradually return to those walls, along with the certainty that a mother's love never dies. It merely changes form, like roses that bloom again after the harshest winter. Morning was dawning as Thomas finished reviewing all of Sarah's outstanding debts. Stacks of papers lay neatly sorted on his desk. Hospital bills, unpaid loans, overdue fees. The total was staggering, even for a wealthy man. Not the amount itself, but the weight these debts had borne in Sarah's final months. A movement at the door caught his attention. Marie was there, still in pajamas, the golden locket reflecting the first rays of sunlight. "I can't sleep," Thomas asked gently. Marie shook her head and walked to the desk. Her green eyes skimmed over the papers with an understanding beyond her 12 years. "Mom used to keep everything in colored folders," she said, touching one of the documents lightly. "Red for urgent, blue for can wait, yellow for when she had some money." Thomas picked up a battered red folder. Inside, besides the bills, was a handwritten list, "Promises to my princesses." The paper was crumpled, stained with tears. "She read this every night," Marie continued, sitting beside Thomas. "She said a promise is the most important thing in the world." Thomas began reading the list, each line hurting his heart. "Never separate Marie and Sophie. Make sure Sophie keeps drawing. Teach Marie to be strong without losing her kindness. Find Thomas. He'll understand when he sees the locket. Help the girls believe in magic even on the hardest days." "One night," Marie said, holding the locket, "Mom made me promise 3 things." Thomas set the papers aside to give her his full attention. First, always protect Sophie. Second, never give up on dreams no matter how hard things get. And third, Marie paused, tears in her eyes. "Trust the locket. She said it would take us to the right person." Sophie stepped into the room, dragging her teddy bear. "Marie, you're crying?" Marie quickly wiped her tears, opening her arms for her sister. Sophie climbed into her lap, glancing curiously at the papers on the desk. "They're Mom's bills," Marie explained. Sophie picked up one of her drawings from among the papers, a picture of Sarah in a hospital bed, smiling despite the machines around her. "That day," Sophie whispered, "Mum promised us she'd find a prince who would take care of us, but not a real prince. She said he'd be better." Thomas felt his heart skip. Marie continued, "She said he'd be a special friend with a heart of gold, just like the locket." At that moment, looking at these two girls, so small yet so brave, so reminiscent of Sarah, Thomas made his choice. "Girls," he called softly, "I have something important to tell you." Marie and Sophie looked up, expectant. Thomas drew a deep breath. "I want to adopt you, legally. Finish what your mother couldn't, give you a safe home so you can grow up together without fear." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Like a real prince?" "Even better," Thomas smiled, tears in his eyes. "Like the friend your mom trusted, like someone who will love you the way she did." Marie clutched the locket tightly. "Will you keep her promises?" Thomas picked up Sarah's list, all of them, starting right now. He grabbed his phone, dialing swiftly. Within an hour, his legal team was mobilized. Within 2 hours, all of Sarah's debts were being settled. By day's end, the adoption process would be underway. "Sophie," he called to the little artist who was sketching in a corner of the desk, "how about turning one of the spare rooms into your art studio?" Her smile, Sarah's smile, lit up the room. "Can I paint the walls?" "All of them," Thomas promised. "And Marie..." The older girl looked at him with Sarah's green eyes, the locket gleaming at her neck. "You can keep wearing the locket. It's fulfilled its purpose by bringing you both to me. Now it'll be a symbol of our new beginning." Marie touched the golden piece, tears falling silently. "Is Mom watching from up there?" "She is," Thomas replied, hugging them both, "and I'm sure she's smiling." In the days that followed, Laurent Mansion came alive. Sophie's bedroom became a rainbow of colors, her drawings covering every inch of wall. Marie hung Sarah's blue dress in her own closet, a constant reminder of the love that bound them all. One by one, Sarah's debts were paid. Each settled bill was a silent tribute to her relentless fight. Thomas stored the receipts in a special folder, not red for urgency, but golden like the locket that changed their lives. At night, when the girls slept, Thomas sat in his study, rereading Sarah's list of promises. Each item now had fulfilled, checked off, except the last. Help the girls believe in magic even on the hardest days. Glancing at the locket gleaming on Marie's neck through the slightly open door, Thomas smiled. That promise was already coming true. After all, what greater magic was there than love strong enough to unite 3 broken hearts into a new family? Sarah might be absent physically, but her love lived on in every one of Sophie's smiles, every protective gesture from Marie, and every beat of Thomas's heart. And in the golden glow of that locket, there was proof that sometimes the greatest miracles are born from the greatest sorrows. Thomas's decision went beyond legal adoption or clearing debts. It was about honoring the love of a mother who never gave up, about turning her struggle into a legacy of hope. It was about ensuring the girls believed that even in the darkest times, love's magic can light the way home. Autumn painted the trees in the mansion's gardens with golden hues, matching the locket that still hung around Marie's neck. 5 years had passed since the night the 2 homeless sisters saved a man from a burning car. The once perfectly pruned hedges were now an explosion of colors, an abundance of roses, each planted with love by Sophie in memory of her mother. Thomas stood at the door of his study, coffee in hand, watching as Marie helped Sophie organize her new colored pencils. The golden locket swung around the older sister's neck, its glow calmer now, as though it had fulfilled its most pressing mission and could finally rest. "Blue goes here," Sophie explained, "because it was Mom's favorite color." Mentioning Sarah no longer brought just pain. Over time, memories turned into gentle smiles and little traditions the girls were determined to keep alive. Sophie's room had become a kaleidoscope of colors. The once sterile walls now told stories through her drawings. In a special corner, protected by a glass frame, hung her first painting in the mansion, a newly formed family, with a shining star smiling down from the sky. "Mr. Laurent," Marie called, breaking his reverie. She still struggled to call him Dad. "Could you help us hang these up a bit higher? Sophie wants to make a gallery like we had in our secret spot at the old house." Thomas entered the room, surveying the area they wanted to decorate. Early on, he would have hired a professional decorator, but now he understood. These small shared tasks were what turned a house into a home. How about if, he started to suggest, but stopped when he saw Marie gripping the locket as she often did when anxious. "It's okay if you don't want to," she quickly said. "We can wait for the butler." "No," Thomas smiled, picking up the hammer and nails the girls had gathered. "We'll do it together, the way your mum would have." Marie's green eyes, Sarah's eyes, lit up. Sophie was already sorting the drawings she wanted to display, chattering about each one. Adaptation wasn't easy. There were nights Thomas woke to Marie's silent tears, mornings when Sophie refused to leave her art corner, afraid this new life might be a dream, moments when they all felt the weight of Sarah's absence. But there were also little victories. The first time Sophie ran to show a new drawing, proud of its colors, the day Marie let Thomas help with homework, trusting he wouldn't think less of her. The morning she set 3 mugs on the breakfast table without even thinking, as if it had always been that way. Thomas learned something new every day. That fatherhood wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts, but the simple moments, knowing Sophie only slept after 3 bedtime stories, understanding Marie needed 5 minutes alone each morning, just her and the locket, silently talking to Sarah. The once formal cold mansion grew warm in every corner. The kitchen, formerly the staff's exclusive domain, now saw Thomas trying, and sometimes hilariously failing, to make Sunday pancakes, a tradition started by Sarah. "Not quite like that," Marie guided patiently. "Mom used to shape them differently for each of us. A heart for Sophie, a star for me." So Thomas tried again, determined to keep those small bits of Sarah's magic alive. The locket continued to be the family's symbolic heart. Marie wore it like a second skin, but with a new kind of touch, less a gesture of mourning or longing, more a connection to the love that had united them all. "Mom was right," Sophie commented one evening, while Thomas attempted to braid her hair the way Sarah did. "You're better than a real prince." "Why's that?" Thomas asked, wrestling with a particularly rebellious strand. "Because a prince always does everything perfectly. You try, mess up, and try again, just like Mom did." Marie, doing homework nearby, smiled. So much like Sarah. "And a prince can't make funny, crooked pancakes." Thomas laughed, finally securing the braid, not perfect but full of love. That was what he was learning about fatherhood. It wasn't about perfection, but presence. The household staff, initially startled by the shift in atmosphere, slowly adapted. The housekeeper learned to tolerate scattered toys, realizing that a lived-in home didn't need to be immaculate. The gardener set aside a special corner for Sophie to plant flowers that might not match the rest of the landscaping. Late at night, when the girls slept, Thomas would sit in his study gazing at old photos of Sarah, not with guilt or regret anymore, but with gratitude. She had given him the greatest gift possible, the chance to love and be loved unconditionally. "You were right, Sarah," he murmured to a photo of her smiling, the locket gleaming in the sun. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what truly matters." In the room next door, Marie slept with one hand on the locket, Sophie hugging her teddy bear. On the wall, an art gallery told the story of their family, not one formed by blood, but by love, pain, and hope. The golden locket glowed softly under the moonlight, no longer a relic of loss, but the beating heart of a family that had found its way home. A home not built with walls or money, but with love, memories, and the promise of building a future together, one day at a time. Thomas Laurent, once a businessman who measured success by numbers and acquisitions, now measured it in smiles, crooked braids, lopsided pancakes, and the sparkle in 2 young souls who, like him, were learning that family isn't what you're born with, but what you build with love. The rain fell softly as Thomas parked in front of Sarah's parents' small house. Marie and Sophie dozed in the back seat, tired from the long drive. The golden locket around Marie's neck glimmered faintly, as though sensing it was returning to its roots. Elizabeth and George Matthews waited on the porch. Their aged faces bore the grief of losing a daughter. Elizabeth held an old wooden box, her fingers gently caressing its lid. "They look so much like her," Elizabeth whispered when the girls awoke. "Especially Marie with those green eyes." Inside the modest home, time seemed frozen. Photos of Sarah adorned the walls, from infancy to her final visit. always with that golden locket around her neck. "She came here," George began, his voice shaking, "the night before the accident." Elizabeth opened the box she'd been holding. Inside were a journal and a neatly organized folder of documents. Sarah spent the whole night here, preparing everything. Marie, sitting on the floor while fiddling with the locket, looked up. "That's when Mom said she was going to get help." Elizabeth nodded, tears flowing quietly. She finally found the address for Thomas's office. She'd spent months trying to reach him through secretaries and assistants. Sarah was always determined, George continued, picking up the journal. That night she told us everything. How sick she was, how the debts kept piling up, her fear of leaving the girls alone. Thomas felt his chest tighten. Elizabeth opened the journal to the final entry, Sarah's handwriting unsteady but resolute. "Dear Diary, tomorrow I'll finally see Thomas. After so many attempts, so many doors slammed, I found a way. The locket he gave me will be my credential. Nobody else knows the story or the engraving inside it. The girls are at the shelter for now. I promised them I'd be back with good news. Marie is so strong taking care of Sophie, just like I used to look after Thomas when we were kids. Mum told me to wait, not to travel in this storm, but I can't. Every day that passes is one less day I have with my daughters. The cancer is advancing too quickly. Thomas will understand when he sees me. He'll remember the promise we made under that tree in the park, on the last day before he left. The locket keeps that memory, not just in its shine, but in the words engraved that only we know. If something happens to me, God, I don't want to think about that, but if it does, I know the locket will guide my girls to him. Thomas always had a heart of gold, even if the business world hardened him. This is my final attempt. Everything I have, all the evidence of who I am, all the girls' documents are in this folder. Most important of all, the truth about what the locket means. Forgive me, Thomas, for keeping secrets all these years, but tomorrow I can finally look you in the eyes and say..." The entry stopped there. Elizabeth pulled out an envelope from the box. The bus left at 5 a.m. Sarah sat by the window, holding this folder. The driver said she was smiling, touching the locket. "At 7:42, George continued, voice breaking. "A truck lost control in the rain. The bus..." He couldn't finish. Sophie clutched her teddy bear tightly. Marie clung to the locket, tears slipping down her cheeks. Paramedics said, Elizabeth added softly, that her final moments were lucid. She held the locket, repeating, "Tell Thomas, tell him." Thomas couldn't hold back his own tears. What did she want me to know? Elizabeth gently took the locket from Marie's neck. With great care, she pressed a small, barely visible catch on the side. The locket opened, revealing a tiny engraving. "To Sarah, my light in the darkness. I promise to always take care of you. With eternal love, Thomas, 1975. She never took off the locket, George explained, because it held the only promise that truly mattered to her, that you'd protect her. In the end, Elizabeth added, returning the locket to Marie, she died trying to reach that promise, not for herself, but for her daughters. Marie stared at the inscription, then at Thomas. That's why Mom always said the locket was magic, because it held a promise of love. Thomas picked up the folder Sarah had been carrying that day. Inside, along with the documents, was a letter addressed to him. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't complete my journey to you, but the locket, faithful to your promise, found a way. Forgive me for not being braver sooner. Pride kept me from reaching out when things first got bad. By the time I understood some battles can't be fought alone, it might have been too late. Marie and Sophie are my most precious treasures. Marie has my strength, Sophie has my heart. The locket you gave me, which I've worn for so many years, now passes to them, not just as jewelry, but as a symbol of the love that united us in childhood, and I hope will unite them with you now. The promise engraved in the locket, to always take care of me, I ask that you transfer it to them. I know it's a lot to ask after so many years, but you were always the best person I ever knew. Say, with eternal love, Sarah." Only the soft sound of rain on the window broke the ensuing silence. Marie and Sophie, now in Thomas's arms, cried quietly. Elizabeth and George watched, their own tears mingling with memories of their daughter. "Sarah succeeded," Elizabeth whispered finally. Through the locket she made it home. Thomas hugged the girls tightly, the locket gleaming between them with renewed light. The promise engraved inside, made so many years ago, had finally found its true purpose. Outside, the rain yielded to sunshine, just like that distant day when a boy gave a golden locket to his best friend, never imagining that simple gesture would echo across time, reuniting broken hearts into a new family. Spring sunlight bathed the facade of the new building. Sarah Matthews Foundation gleamed in golden letters, shining almost as bright as the locket Marie still wore. Thomas watched the crowd outside, mothers arriving with their children, hopeful despite tired eyes. Marie stood next to him, now 10 years old and armed with a deeper understanding of her mother's sacrifice. Sophie, 8, sketched in a new art pad, no longer childish scribbles, but truly expressive art that captured the essence of the people the foundation served. "Is this how Mom felt?" Marie asked softly, watching a young mother trying to calm 2 small children. Thomas followed her gaze. The woman reminded him of Sarah, not in appearance but in that same fierce determination. "Probably," he said, "but now these mums won't have to fight alone." The Sarah Matthews Foundation had grown out of the memories found in Sarah's box. Every unpaid bill, every desperate note about unaffordable medication, every unanswered plea for help became guiding principles for the project. The building housed a free medical clinic, full-time childcare, a professional training center, and legal support. But most importantly, it offered something Sarah never had: hope. "Look, Dad," Sophie called, showing him her latest drawing. It depicted the first family the foundation had helped, a single mother with 3 children, now running her own business. Thomas still got emotional when the girls called him Dad. It had been a gradual transition, first in fleeting moments, then in emotional situations, until it became as natural as breathing. "It's beautiful, Sophie," he said, examining how she had captured that family's transformation. In the drawing, the mother glowed with strength and confidence, her children blossoming around her. Marie touched the locket, a gesture now more comforting than painful. "Do you think she's watching? Is she proud?" "I'm sure of it," Thomas replied, embracing both girls. "Sarah always knew you would be extraordinary." In the foundation's lobby, a large portrait of Sarah dominated the main wall. Not a sorrowful photo from her final days, but one of her smiling in a rose garden, the golden locket shining in the sun. Beneath it, a plaque told her story, not of her death, but of the love that inspired a wave of hope. Marie spent hours gazing at that portrait, understanding more each day about her mother's sacrifice. At 10, she was already an active participant in the foundation's work, joining Thomas in meetings, suggesting improvements based on her own experiences. "Yesterday," she said, still looking at the photo, "a girl my age arrived here with her mom. They were living in their car. We almost had to do that once, remember?" Thomas squeezed her hand gently. That girl and her mother now lived in one of the foundation's transitional apartments, receiving every form of support until they could stand on their own feet. Sophie kept drawing, her art now decorating the foundation's halls. Each portrait told a story of transformation, families arriving in pieces, leaving stronger, just like she and Marie had. "Dad?" Sophie called, lifting her eyes from the sketchbook. "Could we do an exhibit? Show all the family's stories we've helped?" "Absolutely," Thomas smiled. "How about we call it Sarah's Gallery?" Sophie's eyes lit up. Marie pressed the locket, smiling through tears. The foundation continued to expand, opening branches in other cities, bringing hope to more families. Each new center carried the spirit of the original, a mother's unconditional love turned into action. Thomas had changed his company too. Now single mothers were prioritized in hiring, daycare services were provided in every office, and flexible schedules became the norm. The corporate world that once denied Sarah was now shaped by her legacy. Marie started a special program within the foundation, Lockets of Hope. Each family that came through received a small golden pendant, a symbol that they would never have to struggle alone again. "They're not magic like moms," she told new children, "but they carry the same promise that someone is always there to help." Sophie led art therapy workshops for the children. Through drawing, she helped them process their experiences, just as she had done. One particular afternoon, while watching the sunset from Thomas's office in the foundation, Marie made a discovery in the locket, a secret compartment they'd never noticed before. Inside was one final note from Sarah. "Sound, my beloved girls, if you're reading this, The locket has done its job and led you to Thomas. I know the journey was hard, but you're stronger than you realize. Marie, my warrior, keep protecting your sister, but allow yourself to be protected too. The locket isn't just a symbol of loss, but of eternal love. Sophie, my little artist, keep painting the world with your colors. Each of your drawings is a piece of my heart still beating. Thomas, my lifelong friend, thank you for keeping your promise, even when I couldn't ask you in person. Take care of our girls. The locket's real power was never in the object itself, but in the love it represents. May that love keep growing, transforming other lives as it transformed ours. So with eternal love, Sarah. Marie quietly cried, and Sophie hugged her while Thomas wrapped them both in his arms. Outside, the sun turned the sky golden, reflecting off the locket that was now more than an heirloom. It was the very heart of a family born out of sorrow but thriving in love. How the Sarah Matthews Foundation would keep growing, reaching countless lives, spreading hope. But its greatest miracle had already happened, turning the story of a mother who died trying to save her daughters into a legacy of love that would save thousands of other families. Around Marie's neck, the golden locket shone with a tranquil glow, as though Sarah was smiling in peace, watching her final promise come true and multiply into infinite possibilities of love and redemption. Laurent Mansion awoke to the first rays of sunlight on a special spring morning. 5 years had passed since that stormy night when 2 homeless sisters saved a man from a fiery car. The garden, once a formal display of flawlessly trimmed hedges, now burst with a kaleidoscope of color. Hundreds of roses of every variety, each one planted with purpose and love by Sophie in memory of her mother. Marie, now 12, watered the flowers with diligent care. The golden locket she wore captured the dawn light, its gentle glow reflecting in the beads of dew still clinging to the petals. Her green eyes, just like Sarah's, observed each rose with a devotion only true love could inspire. Thomas watched from the veranda, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. The once high-powered executive who measured success by acquisitions now found his real wealth in these simple morning moments. His hair was more silver now, but a youthful brightness shone in his eyes that business had never given him. "Dad!" Sophie called, running from the backyard art studio Thomas had built to nurture her rapidly developing artistic skills. At 10, she already showed an extraordinary gift for capturing emotions on canvas, not just images. In her small hands, trembling with excitement, she held her latest creation, a large painting she'd spent months perfecting. It depicted the Laurent family, but not just as they were now. Sarah was there too, not as a shadow of sorrow, but as a vibrant force connecting them all. In the portrait, the golden locket was the focal point, its glow linking every figure like beams of sunlight. Sarah smiled, her spirit embedded in every brushstroke, in Marie's emerald eyes, in Sophie's gentle grin, in Thomas's protective gaze. It was a celebration not of loss, but of the love that bound them. "It's for the Foundation's exhibit," Sophie explained, her eyes shining with the same enthusiasm Sarah used to show when planning surprises for her daughters. "I'm calling it the Locket Circle. What do you think?" Marie approached, still holding the watering can, drops of water marking her path on the marble floor. Her keen eyes studied the painting with Sarah's same intensity. "Sophie, it's absolutely perfect." The exhibit Sophie referred to was part of the 5-year anniversary celebration of the Sarah Matthews Foundation. What began as Thomas's personal redemption had evolved into a national movement, touching thousands of lives and rewriting hopeless stories into ones of hope. Thomas opened his mouth to suggest breakfast, but was interrupted by the ring of a familiar tune, a lullaby Sarah used to sing, now Marie's ringtone for calls from the Foundation. "It's Mrs. Clara from the Foundation," Marie explained, answering the phone with the composure of someone far older than 12. Since creating the Lockets of Hope program, she'd taken a more active role in management, turning her own loss into a source of healing for others. Thomas and Sophie went inside, leaving Marie to her important call. In the kitchen, Sunday pancakes awaited, a tradition Thomas had finally mastered after many attempts over the years. They weren't as flawless as Sarah's once were, but they carried their own special warmth. "Dad," Sophie called while setting the table, her fingers still stained with paint. "I've been thinking, do you think Mom somehow knew?" "Knew what, sweetie?" "That everything would work out in the end. That the locket would bring us to you. That we'd be happy again." Thomas paused, recalling Sarah's final note discovered in the locket's secret compartment. Her words, written with such love and hope in her darkest hour. "I think your mom had something stronger than knowledge," he said thoughtfully. "She had faith, not just in the locket, but in the love it stood for." Marie walked in, her green eyes sparkling with that special light she got whenever something good happened at the foundation. "You won't believe it. Remember the first family we helped? Maria with her 3 kids? How could they forget? Maria had come to the foundation in dire straits, homeless, ill, desperate to keep her children together. It was like seeing Sarah's spirit all over again, another mother fighting against overwhelming odds. Well, her oldest boy, Jerome, just got into medical school. And guess what? He wants to do his residency at the Foundation's clinic once he graduates. He says he wants to give back, to help other families the way we help them. Sophie immediately grabbed her sketchbook, always nearby. "I've got to draw this. It's like a perfect circle, right? Mom's love keeps going around, touching more and more people." "That's exactly it," Thomas agreed, placing heart-shaped pancakes, Sarah's old tradition, onto plates. "Your mom started a circle of love that keeps on expanding." Sunday breakfast at Laurent Mansion was no longer just a meal. It was a celebration of life. Between laughs and shared stories, Sarah was present, not as a painful absence, but as a guiding light. Marie touched the locket again, a gesture that had evolved over the years. What once was a reflex of sorrow was now a movement of connection and gratitude. Sometimes at the foundation, I see Mom reflected in the mothers we help. The same determination to do anything for their kids. Sophie nodded, her pencil sketching little hearts on the edges of a napkin, capturing the warmth of the moment. I see her in the kids too, how they learn to smile again after everything, how their moms fight for them, just like Mom fought for us. Thomas gazed at his daughters in awe. They weren't his by blood, but every fiber of his being recognized them as his own. Marie, at 12, carried Sarah's unwavering determination, that ability to turn adversity into purpose. Sophie, at 10, possessed Sarah's unique sensitivity, finding beauty in the unlikeliest places. "You know," he said, pouring fresh orange juice from the grove they'd planted together, "your mom accomplished more than she ever could have imagined." "What do you mean?" Marie asked, letting the locket fall so it caught more light. "Sarah had 2 goals when she left on that final trip: to get help to save you both, and to ensure her love wouldn't be forgotten. But look at what happened. She didn't just secure your futures, she started a legacy that's saving entire families, generations of people who never even met her but whose lives she changed." Sophie set her pencil down, eyes thoughtful. "It's like the roses in the garden, right? Mom planted the first ones and now they spread seeds everywhere, making new gardens, new stories." "Sounds exactly," Thomas smiled, reaching for his younger daughter's hand. "Her love was like those roses. The more you cultivate it, the more it spreads, creating beauty in places you never imagined." Marie stood up suddenly, moving with that grace that reminded him so much of Sarah. She went to an old china cabinet and returned with a familiar box, the one holding Sarah's final belongings from the accident. "I think it's time," she said, opening it reverently. "For the Foundation's 5-year anniversary celebration, I've been working on something special." Inside the box, besides the well-known documents and mementos, was a new project Marie had meticulously developed in secret. I call it Sarah's Gardens. The idea is to create healing spaces at every foundation center, with rose gardens like the ones Mom loved so much. Not just for decoration, but as places where families can reconnect, where kids can play, where mothers can find a moment of peace. Sophie was already hunched over her sketchbook, hands flying as she visualized the concept. "We can use my drawings to tell her story, not the sad parts, but the part about love that keeps on growing, spreading, changing lives." Thomas watched his daughters plan, their hearts brimming with the same love Sarah had planted so many years before. The scars of those hard days hadn't simply vanished. There were still nights Marie woke with tears, moments Sophie got lost in old memories. But now those scars were symbols of their strength. The golden locket shone on Marie's neck, no longer just a keepsake of grief and longing, but a testament to the love that turned tragedy into triumph. Sarah had achieved far more than saving her daughters. She created a legacy of hope, one that would keep blossoming for generations. "Dad," Sophie called, showing him a new drawing of a circular rose garden with a giant golden locket in the center, people holding hands around it in a ring of support and love. "Do you think we can really do this? Turn Mum's story into something that helps people not to give up, even when everything seems impossible?" Thomas studied the sketch, simple yet profound like Sarah's love. "We can," he said, pulling both girls into a tight embrace. "And we will, because that's what your mom taught us, that true love always finds a way home, no matter how many obstacles stand in its path." Marie stroked the locket one last time, smiling through tears that were now more about gratitude than sadness. "She did it, didn't she? Mum really saved us." "Yes," Thomas replied, looking at Sarah's portrait on the wall, eternally smiling among her beloved roses. "She saved all of us." Outside, the rose garden continued to flourish in the morning sun, each bloom a living testament to the love Sarah left behind. The golden locket glowed serenely, no longer hiding painful secrets, but radiating the truth Sarah always knew. That love, when genuine and pure, can transcend even death, transforming lives far beyond its original reach. The Laurent family rose from the ashes of tragedy, emerging stronger and more united than ever. And in each shared smile, each comforting hug, each life touched by the Sarah Matthews Foundation, the spirit of that extraordinary mother lived on, proving that her final act of love was just the beginning of something far greater, an infinite circle of hope that would keep growing, flourishing, and changing lives, much like the roses in her garden, eternally renewed by the power of true love.